Josh, let me go back to you. It really seems that the Democrat Party is at a crossroads. See what I did there? And with that, what is it that they're going to have to do? I mean, this obviously everything they're putting up is not working.
Well, I think they have been in this state for a very long time, and they haven't been willing to face it. I think what has happened in this country is we've actually had a cultural shift. And I believe that the extremes have died. Going all the way back to Charlottesville, Trump's first term in office, he rejected the quote-unquote alt-right. He actually condemned both sides. He did say there are good people on both sides, but he condemned the extremes on both sides. The alt-right died in Charlottesville. But the Democrats, they've kind of held on to the very, very far left, the communists and the socialists. I think what we saw under the Biden administration was kind of the bubbling up of all those forces. The Democrats, they have not wanted, I think, they don't want to fracture their party. They don't want to risk breaking their party because I don't think they believe they can afford it. So they've held on to these really extreme people and let them really bring about really extreme policies, even though I don't think it resonates with their voters. So while the Trump administration, they brought on a lot of Democrats. They brought on a lot of independents. Look, for example, Elon Musk. I believe he's more of a libertarian. Joe Rogan, he used to be a Bernie Sanders supporter.
That's right.
RFK Jr., a Democrat. Tulsi Gabbard, a Democrat. They're not extreme by any means. They've gone towards the middle, but a lot of the Democrats, they're still embracing some very extreme people. They need to get rid of that if they're going to save their party, I think.
Well, one such Democrat, Stephen A. Smith, he's doing the great job for the Republican side. Look at this video he put out, taking the Dems to task.
Now you see why Stephen A. Smith was in the polls as a presidential candidate? See what I'm talking about? You see that idiocy right there? You talk about something, people being tone deaf. Why do 22 Democratic senators be literally echoing the same thing and think that would resonate with the American people? All it shows is that the same fabric of our democracy is unchanging in the eyes of some of these officials, and as a result, the constituency they represent, which is why Donald Trump is in office. What, do I have to come up to Capitol Hill and give you lessons? Seriously, you don't get it? All you did, Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Chuck Schumer. Let's all get together. Let's put this in a prompter, and all together, albeit in separate rooms, we'll grab a microphone and say the same thing. And that's what's going to resonate with the American people. And then you wonder why you're no longer in power.
What do you think, Rick? You wonder why you're no longer in power? I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, no, he's right. He's right on. James Carville's out there, basically saying the same thing. So there are some Democrat voices that, they get it. They're reading the tea leaves. They realize the damage to the brand that is happening and how long it's going to take to dig out of it. They're going to need I think they need a Bill Clinton type that is good at marketing and that can come out and give the unity speeches and not sound like a total crazy person. And they're going to have to come back to the middle. They're going to have to come back to common sense in some of these areas. And I've said this a million times here on FlashPoint. I hope they do. I'm a big fan of having a multi-party system, a two-party system, so that you have competition and that both of them are espousing pro-America, pro-biblical ideas. We need to get back to that point. And, man, they are so far out there right now. It's going to take a guy like Stephen Smith to hopefully get them to wake up. But the damage is huge, Gene. On the street, people that would have never voted Republican or been for Donald Trump are saying, obviously, I got to go somewhere besides these crazies over here.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Ben, look at this. This is one of my favorite part of the speech was the bingo signs or the auction signs they were holding up. Look, it's bad. Ben, it's bad when MSNBC starts talking bad about it. Watch.
Yeah,
How they gonna snatch it back, Michael, when they holding up bingo or auction signs?
I was gonna say, thank you, Simone.
Can we talk about it?
The bingo signs were killing me. I don't know who thought up the bingo signs, but they should be fired.
Michael, this is an indictment, in my opinion, on the Democratic leadership.
I think he should be fired too, because they own Photoshop is just one of the great pieces of software that we showed what people were doing with the signs.
It's so good.
Trump 2028, all kinds of stuff. All right, Ben, what do you think? So they keep the bingo signs, make that part of the Democratic Party, or get rid of them?
Yeah. No, I'm kind of at a split with Rick on this one. I say keep doing it. I say let them dissolve themselves. By the way, we were watching this. My daughter, we're out here. I just got to show my girls real quick. They're homeschooling. Olivia's down here. This is Olivia, and we got our pets out here, and my wife, Chloe's in the back of the car over there. Beautiful Arkansas. My wife is out here doing an amazing job with our girls. But my 7-year-old, the reason, besides just showing our awesome family and shouting out to homeschool and getting out of public schools and the demonic stuff they're teaching in there and the woke education curriculum, but my 7-year-old sitting there watching it, and she's like, why are they acting like that? Why are the Democrats acting like that? My 7-year-old. And the Democrats don't understand it. And so, I look at it, and by the way, some of those signs they did, the Photoshopped Rashida Tlaib, I can't repeat some of the things that were on her sign, were incredible, hilarious, but they are. Back to Colonel West's point, they're tone deaf. They are totally clueless to what they're doing. And again, it's a bit cliche, but you talk about biblical principles. They've got scales over their eyes. They can't see. They're living in darkness. They think they're in light. They don't realize what light actually is. And so they don't see the outside, but the American people sure do. And so that's where you see this. That's why President Trump won. That's why we took back the House and the Senate. And that's why if they continue doing what they're doing, their party is going to die. And I don't actually feel that bad about that, because I don't think coming back to the center is enough, because the center with these guys is still woke culture. It's still attacking Christianity. It's still attacking the family unit. It's still pushing for socialism and all this other garbage. That's what the center for Democrats is. The far left are full-blown, put you in camps, kill your family, communists. And I don't see them fixing that. They are so controlled and captured by that mentality. I don't see them coming out of it, but we'll see.
We'll see. Bill O'Reilly, let's hear what he had to say. Just go to News Nation. Watch.
I think the Democratic Party is on the verge of collapse. And I liken it to 1931, when Herbert Hoover and the Republican Party basically said to the very suffering American people in the Depression, we're not helping you. You got to do it on your own. It's all about self-reliance. We're not going to give you any safety nets. That led to 5 consecutive Democratic wins. 5. Not until Dwight Eisenhower, 20 years later, did the Republicans recover. I see the same scenario for the Democrats.
All right. Let me go to you, Colonel West. Your thoughts? Are they on the verge of collapse?
Yeah, I do believe that the Democrat Party, as they are now, are looking toward political exile. I don't think that they can redeem themselves. And as a Christian, I do believe in redemption, but I don't think that they are going to cast aside their political ideology, and the American people are pushing them aside. So we will see another incredible thumping of them in the midterm election cycle, which normally is not the case with an incumbent president. But I think that President Trump is going to buck those trends as well.
Well, it's just interesting to watch, isn't it? You just don't know what they're going to do. And I don't know. I really am surprised. In fact, I'm going to ask you this before we go to break. I saw a piece of an interview Charlie Kirk did with Gavin Newsom. Now, I know you wouldn't normally put those two people together, but they sat down, and suddenly I saw in that interview Gavin Newsom moving a little further right off of men and women's sports, saying it was just not really fair. I'm like, is this the new face of the Democrat Party? I'll start with you, Josh Phillip. Who's the new face of the Democratic Party?
Well, according to polls, the new face is the old face. I think Kamala Harris is actually still polling pretty high for him, which for them is probably bad news, because that's the best they have. I think they are looking to Gavin Newsom as another potential option, but I mean, I don't think a lot of voters are going to forget about California. And I would actually even say the fires and the handling of it, that could really affect his future as well. I do think you're going to see a lot of them trying to change their lines to align more with what they see to be, the new policies. I do think what Gavin is saying, I think what Jon Stewart is saying even aligns with that. They're trying to kind of pull back from the extremes, but I think people will doubt. They will question, is it genuine? Do they actually believe this? Or are they just saying it because they want votes? And that's going to be the big challenge for them.
Yeah, Colonel West, does it need to be somebody totally different?
Yes.
Yeah, it would need to be someone totally different, but I don't think they have anyone waiting in the wings. There's no David out there for them. There's no ram in the bush. I remember the song by The Who, "We Won't Be Fooled Again." Remember the line, "Meet the new boss, same as the old boss." They've lost credibility, and I don't know if they have to go back to zero to start trying to rebuild their party. But again, they've been captured by the progressive socialist far left, and they're not going to give up.
Okay, Ben, your thoughts?
Yeah, the biggest problem they have right now is it doesn't matter who you have. Gavin Newsom can try to change his stripes to spots. It's the base of the Democratic Party right now is radical, godless, leftist, communist, open borders. They don't want anything. They're the ones marching in the streets, trying to stop every deportation, whether it's a rapist, a murderer, anybody. That's the base of the Democratic Party. So if they're going to change the face of the Democratic Party, they have to change the base of the Democratic Party. And I don't see that happening. You talk about people burning down our country, burning down our streets against Republicans. If they start going against their own base, it's like what we saw at the DNC. They're going to burn themselves down. So they are really stuck in a tough place right now. And I don't see that. Gavin Newsom is definitely not the face. Nobody's going to forget what he did with the California wildfires, what he's done as a dismal governor in California. Now, I do pray for him. As a Christian, I pray for him. But he is an absolutely terrible political figure. And I don't have a face. The bench on the Democrat side of the aisle is empty. You've got, and then you compare that to what's on the Republican side, we've got the deepest bench I've ever seen. So they're in a world of hurt for a long time to come.
Okay, Rick, I'm going to go to you for the break to kind of wrap this up. Ben just keeps mincing words. He doesn't really say what he thinks. So let's talk about, I want to get your take on what are the Dems, with the face, who is it, and who should we be looking at?
Yeah, all true. Everything everybody said, and I hope nobody misunderstood me. I'm not cheering for the Democrats. What I want is a healthy country and healthy politics and two parties, as I said, remember what I said, that are for common sense and biblical values, which everybody said it right. They're not going to be able to use any of the leaders that they have right now. You've got to have a totally new crop come up, and it probably will take exactly what O'Reilly said, about a generation to do it. It could be 20 years before they're actually able to come back, and that's all fine with me. Believe me, I want us to take all the ground back that they took over the last 80 years. I want the Republican Party to be incredibly strong, and maybe them being radical leftists for a few more years will help us to be more strong and help more, J.D. Vance to come in after Donald Trump or whoever's going to replace him, so that we can get a solid 12 years at least of a good administration. So I think what everybody said is true. I think the Democrat Party is in as bad a shape as what everybody said. What I was simply expressing is that it's not good to have only one party for the values that we stand for. We need two parties competing for those things.
In fact, here's Caroline Levitt yesterday. Behavior of the Democrats in the press conference. She addressed this. Watch.
The behavior of Democrats last night was completely disgraceful and demonstrated how severely out of touch they are with the American public. It was the most shameful moment in the history of presidential addresses in that beautiful chamber. In what was supposed to be a unifying moment for our country, Democrat members of Congress instead screamed at the President of the United States, who was just overwhelmingly reelected by their constituents, walked out of the chamber, and worst of all, they disrespected the American people. Democrats didn't stand to keep men out of women's sports. They couldn't even clap for a girl who got her head smashed in by a man on a volleyball court. Democrats didn't stand for an innocent and beautiful child who is surviving brain cancer. They opposed eliminating taxes on tips and Social Security. They didn't stand in favor of cutting taxes for hardworking Americans. They couldn't even clap for two mothers whose daughters were killed by illegal aliens. One of the only things that could get Democrats off their feet last night was cheering for Ukraine, not for America. Last night was a very clarifying moment for our country. The Democrats exposed themselves as the party of insanity and hate, the party that wants to put America last. They've allowed their Trump derangement syndrome to stop them from celebrating America and our people, and we will not allow them to forget that.
Not allow them to forget it. With me joining us, the panel, incoming White House correspondent for Just the News, Amanda Head. Thank you, Amanda, for joining us. Speak to what you just saw there with Caroline Leavitt. What's your thoughts?
You know, I think she articulated perfectly what most Americans, save for wacky folks on the left who, you know, might as well have been in the chamber sitting there solemnly with the Democrats themselves. It's unfortunate to see Democrats behaving that way. It's also unfortunate. I mean, you would think that, especially seeing the polling coming out, the fact that 69% of Americans, according to CNN, this is not some Trump-loving organization, but 69% had either a very positive or somewhat positive view of President Trump's speech. Over at the YouGov poll, 76% approved of President Trump's speech and said he looked presidential. So I wasn't surprised the night of, but you would think that after seeing those numbers and after seeing the reaction of the American people, that this morning on the floor of the House when Al Green was censured, that maybe there would be a moment where they would say, okay, we're just going to take this and we're going to slide on through it, and we're going to try to just forget that it happened and hope that the American people forget it. But that's not what they did. They sat there on the floor and did these performative behaviors like singing "We Shall Overcome." What are you overcoming? You have a president in office who, I know you don't agree with him, but he is trying to expand freedoms across every single arena of America. He is trying to deregulate so that small businesses can flourish. He is trying to protect our border so that he can protect Americans. He is trying to ignite the economy. He is trying to protect American manufacturing. I understand that Democrats philosophically and politically disagree with him, but like she said, when you can't stand for a 13-year-old boy who beat brain cancer and the mothers of daughters who were murdered by illegal aliens, the trials that those women went through, the volleyball player, all these people should be applauded, and it should not be partisan. And I guarantee you, if it was Joe Biden who brought those people in during his State of the Union address or his initial speech to a joint session of Congress, I guarantee you they would have stood.
I think you're right. Let me show you this clip from Fox News, Peyton McNabb, the volleyball player. Watch.
I wonder where they think they are with the American public on this issue. You'll see them in the audience, as you saw firsthand. These Democrats, congresswomen who showed up in pink specifically to protest President Trump's policies on women. As this is happening, we've got new polling from the New York Times on biological males in women's sports. And Peyton, when asked about thinking about transgender female athletes, meaning athletes who were born male and then choose to be female and participate in women's sports, only 18% think that should be allowed. Nearly 80% of respondents say that should not be allowed. So why do they think, Democrats think, that they're speaking for the people on this issue by protesting fairness in women's sports?
Once again, the Democrats have proven how out of touch they really are. I mean, like you said, 80% of the country agrees with this across all party lines. So for them to be willing to die on this hill just to push this agenda is absurd. And last night, I thought that the pink suits and everyone matching was real cute when, of course, the day before, 0 Democrats voted for the protection of women and girls. And then 0 Democrats stood and applauded when I was getting recognized for my injury, because like Riley said, I mean, they couldn't be more anti-woman, and frankly, they are anti-American. They really embarrassed themselves all night, and it was honestly sad to see, but I wish I could say I'm surprised, but I'm not.
Okay, Amanda, when you see that again, and I know it seems like we're saying the same thing over and over again, but it's still hard to imagine that any real thought was put into this about not standing up or clapping. No matter if it came out of Donald Trump's mouth, we're not going to acknowledge it. It seems to be just horrific. Is it really that way? Is it really that bad?
Yeah. It is. I mean, they are now in a very uncomfortable position where, because they are so dug in on opposing Donald Trump, it is putting them in some very awkward positions, right, and having to having to support some really ghoulish things. And it also makes me wonder, do you not talk to your neighbors This is just an anecdote. I have a friend who she used to live next door to me, and she moved to a different area of the city. But she is a Democrat. She's been a Democrat her whole life, has always voted Democrat. But she has a daughter who is a junior Olympian. And she crossed over and voted for Donald Trump this time around because she said, I don't want my 14-year-old junior Olympian daughter to be stuck in a locker room with a man. Now, that is a very, very liberal area of Los Angeles. I know that this is happening all over the world or all over the country, and you just have to wonder, do these Democrats not talk to their neighbors? Do they not talk to their kids, friends, parents? Do they not talk to people at their church and their communities?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Let me show you this. This is Fox had this instant poll during the segment there, Jocelyn's segment. I want you to watch. The red is obviously Republican, blue, and then yellow. Watch this. It's just interesting to watch how America responded to the speech. Go ahead.
One thing I have learned about Jocelyn is that she loved animals so much. She loved nature. Across Galveston Bay, from where Jocelyn lived in Houston, you will find a magnificent national wildlife refuge, a pristine, peaceful, 34,000-acre sanctuary for all of God's creatures on the edge of the Gulf of America. Alexis, moments ago, I formally renamed that refuge in loving memory of your beautiful daughter, Jocelyn. So, Mr. Vice President, if you would, may I have the order?
Okay, Josh, Philip, in that poll, you see even the independents, kind of peaked there for a moment, right along the side of the those that identified as being Republican. Yet, what we saw with the Democrat was flatline. They really don't see what Americans are saying. They're not listening.
Yeah, well, doing reporting on the border, I know Ben has done a lot. I mean, he's really been nonstop on it. When you talk to people on the border and you find what they care about, you find a lot of Democrats who voted for Trump because of the border issue. I think they're wondering why are so many Latinos becoming Trump supporters. During Obama, massive amounts of them voted for Obama, and I think that's why they opened the border up. They thought they'd get all the votes for him. A lot of them vote for Trump now, and I think they haven't really faced the question of why. If you go to border towns in Texas and Arizona and elsewhere, you find a lot of Latino families who are really against the open border policies. They really do not support it because for them that means crime. That means people cutting the line for their family members. And when you're dealing with people, and when I was in Panama, I remember I was at the Darien Gap talking to Ben's been there as well, talking to people from Ecuador coming across. They were terrified of these gangs. There were people from Venezuela terrified of Tren de Aragua. That's why they're coming here. Yeah. You have people terrified of the gangs they saw destroy their countries. And when they see politicians not applauding when, the president of the United States is standing up against people who were murdered, little girls murdered by these gangs, I don't think that really resonates with many people. And I really think what you're watching right here is politicians not representing their voting bases. I really don't think it was a smart move for them.
I don't think so either. In fact, here's her mother, Alexis Nungare, at what she said about it the next day.
I found it very cowardly that a lot of the Democrats didn't stand, didn't clap, didn't do anything to support anything that Donald Trump is trying to do as president to make this country better. It was very shameful to the Democrats.
Ben, she says it's shameful. I think it was shameful to all of America. You've been down there at the border. Give us an update. What are we seeing? You heard what Josh Phillip was saying. Are we seeing this really change at the border, like what were the reports we're getting?
Yeah, no doubt about it. The demographics of the border have shifted. And I think when we're going back to the first segment, I think they've shifted for at least a generation, if not more. You look at places like Zapata County, Texas. These places have been Democrat voting for generations, and now they've gone hard red. You look at that voting block along the border down to the Rio Grande Valley. These places, again, that were stalwarts for the Democratic Party are now Republican. They're not Republican. They are MAGA. They are absolutely pro-Trump because of what President Trump has done with the border. Because exactly to Joshua's point, what they came across, and some of them came across illegally. Some of the people that are actually going MAGA originally came across here illegally, have created lives for themselves. Some of them have gotten their citizenship over the years. But even some of the other ones that realize, even some of the illegals that are coming up are saying, we don't want that. We don't want these gangs coming up with us. We don't want communism, in particular when they're coming from Venezuela. We were talking to people in the Darien Gap, and we're asking them, hey, the Democrats in America want socialism and communism in America. And they're like, absolutely not. And so even the people that are coming, and back to the original point, the Democrats are just totally clueless in this. They do not realize that their policies have consequences, apparently, and that the people that they thought they had under their thumbs, the blacks and Latinos across America, think for themselves, and they don't just regurgitate like the Democrat leaders do and like they expect their minions to do what the establishment tells them to say. And that's why we saw this massive resurgence or uprising along the border, but it's also why we're seeing this uprising in the inner cities, in the black communities in the inner cities, who have said, wait a second, we were promised 40 acres and a mule. We never got any of that. Now you're giving away our dream, our American dream, to illegals who just came across the border and who, by the way, are victimizing our communities today. And so instead of saying, yeah, he's right on this, we need to come to some common ground. You can't deport 15 million people. Let's figure something out. We screwed up. Let's try to figure this out. They are bought in. It's overcommitment bias, and they're all in on this thing, while the American people say, go ICE, go Tom Homan, go President Trump, make America secure again. It is a divide. We are a divergent country right now. One party going one direction towards America first, the other party bought into America last, and that's why we're seeing the Democrats lose in this catastrophic fashion.
Let's go around here. Start with you, Colonel West. We started the show talking about 189 years ago with the Alamo. 183 men didn't cross the line to say, this is where we're going to stay and do what it takes. And they paid the ultimate price. And we've talked about what's going on with the party. It's drifting, people disrespecting really each other. Forget whether they're Republican or Democrat, to not stand for some of these people. It was horrific at the very least. How are we, if we're going to help save America, what do we do now? We know this is going the wrong way with the left. What is it that we need to be concentrating on as we look into the next really 18 months until we're in election season again? What is it we got to focus on to continue going in the right direction with America?
Well, people have to continue to cross that line, and we have to continue to tell that story and get others to cross that line as well. I think one of the most important things is that the body of Christ has to continue to be resolute, and we have to continue to stand, because this wokeism has to be expelled from out of our halls of churches, which it has sought to infiltrate. I think it's really important that we understand what it means to cross that line, to stand up for our constitutional republic, to stand up for our Judeo-Christian faith heritage values. You know, you look at the border along Texas, 12 or 14 border counties shifted over and crossed that line. And right now, we don't need to just peak for the November election. We must continue to be engaged. We've got municipal level elections that will be coming up here in the state of Texas in May. We need people to be involved with city council elections, school board elections. I know that up in the state of Wisconsin, they have a Supreme Court election coming up on April the 1st. We don't want to have some activist judge to be sitting on the Supreme Court there in Wisconsin and tip that Supreme Court. So again, we need to look at all the levels of governance, and we need to step across that line and say, yes, I'm going to stand for truth. I'm going to stand for justice. I'm going to stand for the principles and values this country was founded upon. And we got to educate our children, like Ben's talking about, and our future generations, so they hold fast to that as well.
Same question, Josh Phillip. I got a minute.
Yeah, well, I do hope this country changes, and I really think it has. In my opinion, what has been happening in this country is that it has changed. We're in a very different culture, in a very different time right now. I believe what we're watching politically represents that shift. I think every poll you've shown tonight, Gene, represents that shift. And there are some people who just haven't gotten the memo. And
that's true.
Hopefully they'll come around. You know, we'll see.
They will. Okay, Amanda, we've talked about before you came on men and women's sports, everything else. Same question. How do we go from here?
Yeah, I agree with Josh. I think when you tell the American people the truth, even if it's hard truth, they react. And we saw that in November. And, I don't know who here was watching that hearing with the sanctuary city mayors, but you had one of the Democrats on the oversight committee, Ayanna Pressley, shouting over the chairman of that committee, James Comer, talking about how immigrants commit crime at a slower rate than American citizens. And I know for legal immigrants in this country, it has got to be infuriating to have legal and illegal immigrants looped into the same category, because look, the hard truth is, and this is what the American people heard and responded to in November, is the fact that 100% of illegal immigrants who are in this country are criminals. They broke the law by coming into this country. And I think a lot of Americans are starting to subscribe to the Sonny Bono way of thinking about illegal immigrants. He was asked once upon a time what he thought about illegal immigration, and he said it's illegal. And I think that for so many people, when they hear the truth, and a lot, everybody on this network has been doing that, all of the people who are trying to spread the movement of America first, everybody has been telling the truth. And as it turns out, the American people are pretty darn smart, and they realize that was the truth.